Hi, Lindsay. I'm glad you could make it. Here's what I'd like us to do. For you, I'd simply like you to hold your hand out in front of you the way I'm doing it, keeping your arm and your forearm in a comfortable position, maybe shaped like a letter L. Open your hand and your fingers in the modified normal anatomic position that I've already taught you. Perfect. Okay, now let's watch your fingers. I'm going to take my left hand. I'm going to hold my hand in a modified normal anatomic position, imagining that from the tip of my elbow to the tips of my fingers, I'm one solid unit like a sterling silver fork. And as I'm watching your fingers, Lindsay, I'm allowing my hand to gently float in, moving slowly enough to feel texture, temperature, and other sensations. Maybe I'm just feeling the air at the moment. Is it light? Is it dense? Is it cool? Is it warm? And look, your finger's starting to move. See that?
So the question is, how come I feel so much separation from that which is greater than myself? This feeling of being separate from everything around us or from those around us. When this happens, the first thing that I do, I sit my body down and I ask myself, where is it that I even exist? How is it possible that I could be separate from anything or anyone? Because I know that I am oneness. So we have a choice that we have to make to feel an immediate connectivity to everything and everyone. And it's a choice. But our awareness is bold and strong and fierce. And when we forget that we are awareness by our very organic nature, when this understanding of ourselves is unclear emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, then it's real easy for the mind to produce a super, I'm going to say fake news flash right through the center of our busy understanding of ourselves.
Where does the data seem to all come together?
In looking at our data and the data of Constantine relative to monitoring the space, from our data, it was one of the highlights that's consistent through all the four, actually three is the data I've seen, 3 experimental sessions on reconnective healing, is that when a speaker takes the podium and addresses the audience begins to cohere and entrain, and what you see, at least in our data, is that the conditioning of a space linearly changes with time in a significant way. The magnitudes are large, they're robust, and that occurs not only with Eric on the Friday night event thing, but it occurs with the TAs. And in between, you see a very different kind of behavior pattern. In our case, we'll call it the magnetic charge effect, is of a negative pole variety in the sense that the increase in thermodynamic free energy, the absolute value increases, but it has a sign for this kind of event, which happens to be in a negative direction.
Negative meaning?
Negative meaning the analog of a negative electric charge versus a positive electric charge. They both can produce a field.
We know that in the metaphysical / spiritual / new age arena,
we have certain baggage attached to words that is not truly inherent in the word themselves. So for instance, when we speak about that the change is negative, that does not mean not good.
Right.
It's a polarity aspect.
Just a polarity.
And the other conversation we had is when we speak of matter that is dark instead of light, it's an assessment of certain qualities. It doesn't mean dark meaning the evil and light meaning the good. So bear that in mind when the researchers are speaking.
Exactly. I mean, this is the limitation of words. We have learned over the last 100 years, the last 400 years, the language of apples. And now we're going into the world of oranges. So we will need to develop a new language.
As human beings, we mostly perceive our day-to-day experience as unfolding in a local physical reality. We go to the gym, we get in our car and drive to work, we meet our friends for lunch, we kiss our loved ones goodnight. Yet our interaction with what we might just take as this physical, local existence has been changing ever since the discovery of radio waves. Suddenly there was this little wooden box where you pressed a button and music came streaming out. Waves of information traveling through the air from point A, the radio station, to point B, anywhere a radio happened to be tuning into that frequency on the dial. Our physical experience of radio was deceptively simple. Turn on the dial and listen away. Television soon followed. And at first, getting off the couch to change the channel became the only physical activity required to watch. That is, until the remote control was invented, a gadget that used another invisible wavelength, infrared, to change the channel from a distance. Of course, after that, some of us never left the couch. When the internet arrived, it brought about a revolution in communication, and we went from separate and distinct socioeconomic environments to one global village. Everything is so connected that when something happens in Japan, everyone else feels it across the planet. Satellites have us connected to all sorts of media via our smartphones, our computers, and we are constantly receiving information from distant sources and maybe even distant relatives. So when we start to examine closely our relationship with this local experience we're having, we can say that there's really been a shift about how we define what our reality is. I mean, is it only about going to lunch with our friends and ordering things online and heading to the gym? Do we lose ourselves in whatever we're watching on TV or listening to on our iPhones? And right before we go to bed, don't we wish our loved ones goodnight face to face, even when sometimes they're hundreds of miles away? Good nighty.
What do you mean good night? It's only 12 noon here in Mumbai.
Well, I'll be going to bed soon. It's 10:30 at night here in Los Angeles.
Okay, good night then, my love.
We already have a sense to a point that our local reality consistently interacts with non-local source in a constant exchange of information. And that is precisely what is also happening within us and around us at a molecular level. Let me explain. From the very dawn of our discovery of all sorts of wavelengths, it was noticed that somehow there was a correlation of action between particles that were at a distance. In other words, one particle's same behavior was observed in another particle without the aid of any mechanical action. Albert Einstein famously called this spooky action at a distance, and became very dismissive of quantum physics when he realized that this meant two things. A, since the particles' behavior changed instantaneously, they were communicating at speeds faster than the speed of light, which was the constant in his E equals mc squared. And B, that somehow the universe itself was interconnected in ways that allowed for this communication to take place. It was this quagmire that inspired other scientists to search and prove whether action at a distance, as it had become known to those studying electromagnetism, existed or not. Not only have they proven that, indeed, it exists, they've also developed the theory for the field, the matrix of information that connects everything.